Hello and welcome to another video where today I'm looking at whether or not cycling is good for knee pain. This is really a follow-up to our last video, which was about swimming for back pain. These are like two questions that I'm always sort of posed. A lot of people just believe this is all they need to do, and I'm going to tell you it can help you, but it's not all you need to do. So firstly, is it good for knee pain? Well, it can be really good because it's a really easy way to build some strength into your legs. It's obviously one of the first things we do with people following ACL surgery with rehabilitation, and many people in extreme pain, it's one of the first things that we might be able to do. A lot of elite cyclists in the Tour de France and that originally started out cycling because of a knee injury, and they found that they really enjoyed it, kept it going after that it went away, and obviously became professional. But understand, even though you can build some good strength into the quads, it's not the solution to your problem. It never really, it never is, unless you're like your injuries from a car accident or something. It's never really the solution to a problem that's a movement dysfunction. So and also one thing to be wary of, a lot of people who I've seen for knee pain, their knee pain was caused from cycling. So too much cycling without the right things to manage it will give you knee pain. So it's a bit of a double whammy. This one can actually help correct it, but also can help create it. So what happens when you to your knee when you cycle? Well, the reason it feels good is because it builds some strength into the legs without compression or impact. And it's compression on the joint that usually irritates people with squatting, even body weight to begin with, especially the lunges and single leg thing. They just really struggle to find an exercise that doesn't irritate them, because they just have so much compression into the joint and everything's just stiff and irritated. Where cycling, you can build some strength and you don't have that irritation. Running for someone with knee pain is a definite no-no, but they can cycle. It's because the running has just so much impact going through all of the joints, and also running demands stability where cycling does not. So it's a very good way to build some quad strength, which is important, but it's not the only thing. So as much as it builds into the quads, it's the VMO muscle, which obviously a lot of people are aware of, and it gets a lot of attention. And to be honest, it does do a good job of getting some strength into that, because the cycling position, especially if you're using clipless pedals, like like a proper bike setup, it really can structurally align you in the exact way to get that muscle firing. That's one reason why it does really help out a lot of people. Unfortunately, just like the swimming problem with back pain, the minute the person stands up without that help from the bike, and they haven't learned how to control things at the foot, the ankle and the hip, it really doesn't mean anything, because all of that is just going to fall out of alignment, because that's all you have. So as much as it's a stepping stone to something, it's no different to sitting on a leg extension machine that also doesn't demand any stability. So if you're using it wisely, it can really enhance things, but if you're only relying on that, you're not going to get very far. All right, so VMO muscle, by the way, if you're not aware, is the little muscle that sits on the inside of the knee, and it plays a very important role, along with the glutes and the feet, in maintaining the structural integrity of the patella sitting in the groove, and you're not sort of dragging it across as you see in the picture here. All right, so very important muscle, but and the cycling can do a great deal of help to help you. But as I mentioned before, it can also be your undoing. So while it can help you, it will do little address the problems which are coming from instability and poor movement when you're standing up. So unfortunately, you don't live on a bike, and if you did live on a bike, you would end up in a world of pain anyway. So problems that we see when people stand up, if they don't have stability at the foot loses it, and everything just goes with it. So leg internally rotates, knee shifts inward. Vice versa, people might have poor pelvic stability, and this might be 1, 2, 3, 4. Either way, the knee's going to cop it both times. So if you've got both things going on, it doesn't matter how much cycling you do. The minute you stand up, you're going to give it up. And if that's how you're moving all day long, and you're not doing anything to address it, you're going to end up in a world of pain. All right, so understand cycling doesn't demand the stability, especially at the foot, because the bike's doing it all for you. But when we walk, we need these things. All right, so you must learn how to effectively control these elements in single leg stance, squatting, lunging, lateral movements. These are all the things that people with knee pain find very difficult to do. As we mentioned earlier, also too much quad strength will also create problems. Now, understand that when your quads get really, really powerful from cycling, and I know this because I do cycling myself, it creates an inhibition of the glutes. So inhibition just means they sort of get suppressed into being able to work because the hip flexors and the quads just steal their workload from them and start to change things. So this starts to create problems for you because the glutes are powerful external rotators. Hips and quads and adductors are internal rotators and adductors. So they're basically pulling you into more poor alignment that you'll have when you're standing up, and the glutes won't be strong enough to resist them because they're always being suppressed. So you're sort of exacerbating your problem if you're not doing things to correct it or to sort of prevent that from happening. So you can definitely do cycling, but you just got to do a lot of stuff to prevent that from becoming a big problem. The other thing, if you're not aware of your quad flexibility, if you don't stretch it out regularly and try to maintain its alignment, its optimal flexibility, you'll start to drag the patella up. And this is what we see a lot with this sort of a stretch here. I'll see a lot of cyclists that can't get that far. They're almost halfway, which would be almost what I see with people post-operative from ACL surgery, like 4 to 6 weeks after surgery. I see cyclists have the same sort of flexibility as someone like that, and they wonder why they have knee pain. And basically that's again telling you their hamstrings can't go into full contraction, as you would see here. They can't get full contraction because the quads are just so dominant and so stiff they can't get there anymore. So now they're going to have a huge loss of power, and that translates into how they cycle, and they'll have a loss of performance from that as well. All right, so understand, like, too much quad strength is not a good thing. It needs to be relative to your glutes, hamstrings. They all must work together, meaning that you're going to have to use other exercises to counter the damage of cycling. So you can see if you're trying to use cycling to get out of knee pain, it might help you in the beginning to some degree, but it's not going to get you very far. You end up going to probably, if you keep doing more and more of it, going to end up going backwards. All right, so it doesn't address the mechanical disadvantage. All right, so just because of the cycling setup is just really, it's a huge pushing down of the quads. The hamstrings only work from this bottom part 6 o'clock to probably 9. Like most people are trying to pull back, but you just don't have much. It's almost like an 80-20. I'm not sure the exact ratios, but the Tour de France guys would spend a lot of time trying to develop that and get what they call spinning in circles, not in squares. And it can be done, but it's very, very difficult. Most amateur cyclists don't have that know-how, coaching, time on the bike to be able to do that, so they end up just becoming huge quad dominating cyclists and lead to the problems that we've just spoken about. Hamstrings, understand, as much as glutes control the external rotation of the hip, the hamstrings are very important because they've actually been shown to be a real big contributing factor to a lot of ACL injuries in females in football and basketball, just because they oppose the quads. And they really stop that anterior shearing force at the knee in its huge flexion angles that you would have when you're landing from a single leg jump or trying to twist and turn in other sports. And even if you don't play those sports, that becomes a problem when you walk downstairs and stuff, because these guys, the hamstrings are opposing them, and because they never get any workload on the bike, they just become really weak. And now you're at a huge, risk of developing a knee problem from the cycling. All right, so you can sort of begin to see how the problems can eventuate if you're not using the right strategies. So, and lastly, the last thing we want to look at is it doesn't actually change the movement. So let's say you were able to control your hamstring glute quad ratio and you were using good stretching so you didn't lose any knee flexion. That may all be great, but it still doesn't stop you if you only know how to move poorly and simple movements that we use all the time. You're still going to end up in a bad place because cycling doesn't change how you move. You really need to learn how to do that, and this is an example of where we're using a lunge and trying to create poor mechanics and getting him to understand how to use glute and good foot stability to maintain his alignment. And he'll have hip mobility on the back leg. Here's a lateral lunge where we're getting rid of the adductor sort of stiffness and learning how to use good hip action to create glutes and maintain perfect alignment for movement. And this guy plays football. And here's another single leg stance exercise. All right, so again, using glutes and hamstrings in perfect timing. Quads are used in all of these as well. So quads are being used in all of them, but they're being used relative to their partners. And to be honest, in all three of these movements, the glutes and hamstrings are more important than the quad. So basically, these are the type of movements that we see knee pain exacerbated in. So this is where you really need to spend your time developing your strength, not so much on the bike. The bike can help you to some degree, but it's not going to change these at all, no matter how good a bike rider you are. All right, so these actions, they're the ones that are really going to enhance the things that you're lacking. So what are the best exercises? Well, it all depends on the person, and you really need to assess your body, and the results of your tests will tell you where to start and what to look for and what to do. We always start with looking at simple mobility of joints first and basic stability tests, looking at how you move, and then progressing to isolated strength tests, and then adding all the strength elements to all the key movement patterns. The real secret, though, is just to find where your energy leak is and plug that hole with exercises specifically targeted to do so. So in summary, to answer the question, cycling can be a great introduction to strengthening your legs and assist in regaining some lost quad strength, especially post-surgery or when you're in real pain. But understand, it's not the fix or solution to your knee pain. You've got to identify the cause of your pain, and then you'll have to do things standing up, because it'll always come back to a loss of stability, and usually you're looking at the feet and the hip. And sometimes it's just the brain on how you actually coordinate things. So there may be nothing wrong with the joints themselves or the muscles, it's just how you use them that's wrong. And lastly, you must learn how to move correctly. So once you sort of do that, you can easily apply strengthening methods. You can do cycling to as much as you want, and it won't be a problem for you. But you can't really use it to get out of pain. All right, so if you want some more information on tests that I've mentioned and exercises, I haven't really given you much of that here. There's a free report you get from the website. There's a specific knee program. There's some for ACL injuries as well, so you can look up that one if you're recovering from surgery from that. And that takes you through all the stuff that you need to know. Have a look in the summary underneath this video, because there's lots of articles and links to things that will help you out with the questions that you might have. All right, so I hope that answers your question, and see you on one of our next videos.